Hello, everybody. This is Martin. Today I'll be looking at the King of Pentacles as our obstacle and the Nine of Cups as our opportunity card. So let's get started. I'm going to be looking both at the Waite deck as well as the Marseille deck for each of these cards, as their meanings are somewhat different, somewhat similar. Gives us twice as many ways to look at this. So starting with the Waite deck, King of Pentacles. This is this is a this is a person. I think a lot of these cards represent abstract situations. The court cards, the kings, the queens, the pages, the knights. I like to think of them as actually representing individuals. So this obstacle, I would say, is definitely in the form of a person. This is a king, so it's a position of power and authority. It's this character, this particular king is pretty different from the other kings on the deck in the sense that he's actually in civilization. There's a castle behind him. We can guess maybe it's his castle, maybe it's somebody else's castle, but nonetheless, he is close to. He's hanging around close to luxury, security, society. All the other kings they're out in the world. This guy's a little city dude, and it seems a little hypocritical that being the city guy, he's almost disguised himself in these clothes. They're all vines and grapes. They look very natural and earthy. It's like he's trying to make himself look like he is one of the earth, but he's still a king. We could see a little bit of his armored foot poking through. So underneath it all, he's still a king. He's still armored, so he's still closed off. He has his own interest. He's not actually this man of nature, this man of the earth, so to speak. But he certainly has this. He's got this camouflage up. I think, to me anyway, that seems like I've encountered plenty of people like this, and it's often people that are wealthy or powerful, and there's a lot of pressure for individuals like that to disguise themselves as being common, of the people, just like everyone else. They have the same struggles. Um, I think that type of strategy often creates problems, both for those individuals and for individuals that might call them out on it. That might, someone, some boss at a company, let's say, or some expert, they keep going around and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm everyone's friends. I care about the people." Sometimes you approach them under that presumption. They're like, "Hey, I heard you like to help people." Then it turns out that they don't, and they don't want to be exposed as a hypocrite. But at the same time, they're being called out on something that isn't a part of their nature. This can create problems. You can get into a situation where an individual like this wants to sort of get you out of the way because you're pointing to and exposing this double life that they're living. One of the other things that's interesting is that he's sitting on this black throne, and I like to read black as chaos, volatility. It in a good way, it symbolizes opportunity. It's the endless void from which anything can arise. In this case, as an obstacle, as a warning, I think that it represents an an individual that whose authority is based on money, on the economy, and I think the throne, to me, it symbolizes that ruling by wealth is something that is very difficult for an individual to actually rein in and control. The market is this huge, complex, chaotic mess that I don't think any real individual, no matter how wealthy they are, can actually tame. But nonetheless, what we see here is a throne. It's a symbol of authority. So again, I think it's this kind of double life self-deception that this individual is engaging in. The very thing they're sitting on that represents authority is actually something that they don't control. There's no order to it. So I think this is essentially a bad king. You know, he's not owning up to the fact that he rules by this kind of wealth. Yeah, and then the Marseille deck. This guy's interesting. He's really casual. Um, it's kind of like the opposite of the King of Pentacles in the Waite deck, because this is the only king that's outside. So all the other ones are depicted inside their castle. This is the only one who's got a castle in the background. It's a little reverse, but yeah, he's got no crown, which is the other thing that's different about him from the other kings. All the other ones are, you know, they look very kingly, and so this guy, sort of a similar theme. You know, he's got all the appearance of a casual, uh, but he's still called the king. So we're kind of in this interesting position. It's like, well, which is it? He's got some wealth, he's got some money, he's got that coin he's got his hand on, but then also we see this other coin floating in front of him. He's looking at it. It's it's what interests him. He's not interested in the money and the resources that he already has. The thing that draws his interest is in the money to come, the new possible business venture, the new thing of interest. I think in this sense, the obstacle could be interpreted as dealing with an individual who is is caught up. They're busy with their own pursuit of their own. They got their own project going on. They got their own thing. They're yeah. It's just someone who's focused on pursuing money. And I think in this case, I think this might be the kind of individual who might not even be pursuing money for the sake of acquiring more money. I think this could symbolize an individual who is just thrilled by the pursuit of the new venture, the new strategy. It's not about accruing the money that comes from a successful venture. It's from the challenge of just coming up with a new venture that works, right? So this might be a warning of, you know, if you're interacting with an individual that you might be taking on as a partner, and if your goal is to, you know, you got to make some money, you might be with someone who already has enough money that that's not what motivates them. They're just kind of interested in the abstract pursuit of this particular thing, acquisition of resources, let's say. And then on the opportunity, let's start with this guy. Look at this smug little guy. A lot of people don't like this card. He's got an interesting body posture. His his legs are spread open. He doesn't have the crossed arms and the crossed legs. That's a very, you know, withholding, protected sort of pose. He's kind of confident. He's kind of cocky. It's kind of interesting. Um, this, in my opinion, this is depicting. You know, it's the individual. I don't think is as important as the mood. The being dressed in white. You know, this is someone who has attained some degree of, you know, some advanced degree of being ordered, being accomplished, having your things figured out. And he's sitting down. He's pretty static. That's generally what happens with getting really good at some particular thing. It starts to calcify, you know, any structure that you really advance to a far extent ends up becoming a rigid prison almost. So despite this, he's got this red hat, which to me, red, passion, fire, wands, action. The thing that's on his mind literally is moving. And this being the nine, it's near the end of the cycle. It's essentially the, you know, in terms of numerology, this is This is the last card. It's an active card, and it symbolizes moving on to this this final stage of revolution that's going to potentially change everything, right? So I think the opportunity here is getting ready, making the final preparations, or being in a state where you're ready to move on. It almost like a reset. It's one of the things with this particular card. There's a lot of cards that are there's a lot of cards that indicate movement, transformation, moving to the next stage. But there's a big difference between changing your life. You know, there's a big difference between the first radical change you make in your life, one of the countless radical changes you make throughout your life, and what is theoretically the last big change you're ever going to make. And this kind of symbolizes emotionally the the kind of feeling like you're ready to decide to settle in some sort of emotional modality that's going to be it's going to be who you're going to be. Like, he's got a lot of these cups behind him. These are, to me, these are like all the different experiences, all these different emotional experiences that this person has had. And the scene itself has got a lot of yellow. It's very the colormancy of that, is like it's very intellectual. It's like the swords are like the yellow suit, in my opinion. So overall, his environment, the world that he's in, is permeated by reasonable thought. He's had a lot of these different experiences, and it's possible that that's what's brought him to this point where he can sort of think clearly about all these different emotions that life has to offer. Nonetheless, he's seated in a spot that is, he's got this curtain backing him. He's framed by this curtain of blue, which is the color of this particular suit. Cups, blue, water, liquid, emotion, fluids, flowing, changing emotions. So he's framed by this emotional theme, but it's propped up by all these different experiences that he's had. And if he stops displaying and reveling in these experiences, if he takes these experiences down, this whole background, this whole emotional background to his life that maybe defines him, that's going to slip down. Is there going to be anything behind it? Is he going to be starting from scratch? It's one of the big questions. I kind of see this as symbolizing, I think, for a lot of people, the the contemplation of, or the decision to move on from a life that has been largely defined by a lot of volatility, a lot of manic behavior. There's a lot of entertainment to be found in just experimenting, living a crazy life, having a lot of crazy experiences, experiencing a lot of different things. Um, and it could be a pretty daunting thought to imagine giving that up in exchange for something new, maybe in exchange for something stable or singular, going through this revolution that resets you and puts you back to the point where now you're only considering one feeling. You're driven by one idea. There's one emotional pursuit that you have, instead of this, what may have been the pursuit to just go after as many different feelings as you can, experience everything, right? So that's my read on that card. And then with the Marseille deck, um, the the numbered suit cards. I think this is one of the reasons that a lot of people don't really like using this deck, because there's like there's like 40 cards that seem really, really vague to a lot of people, and I think it certainly takes some time to look at these cards that often look very similar to each other, and discern what the subtle differences are. Um, with with this one, you see these 9 cups again. If these symbolize emotions, feelings, experiences, moods, um, it looks to me like, first of all, they are arranged. There's a symmetry to them. So it's like a person that has, like, this would not be the representation of a person who has had a lot of emotions, but for whom some certainly were a much larger influence on their life than others, right? This seems to be a well balanced charcuterie board of experiences that a person has had. Also, they are they are very evenly segregated. The leaves of these plants separate each emotion in its own little distinct area. So this to me represents a type of maturity where you've you've had you've experienced a lot of different emotions, you've lived through a lot of different things, and they don't really bleed into each other anymore. If you feel a certain feeling, you know what it is. You don't get it confused with other feelings. This is this is like a very a very emotionally mature card. You don't mistake boredom for loneliness. You don't mistake horniness for love. You've had these feelings, you've had these experiences. You know where they belong. You know what they symbolize. And another aspect of this is these a lot of these leaves look wilty to me. There's the two near the top that seem to go up, and then there's the four horizontal ones that go to the left and right, and then there's four other ones that aim down like they're wilting. And I think to me this symbolizes, it's like if you put a plant in a pot, it'll grow to a certain size, and then its roots will just fill the pot or the planter, and the roots won't be able to expand anymore. And at a certain point, the plant just won't be able to sustain itself because it'll overgrow its own ability to nourish itself. And at that point, the plant often dies, or at least it dies back far enough so that the, you know, what's left over living is what the plant can actually support. Now, I think that this sounds kind of sad, and it kind of is, but I think the the opportunity here is potentially to have enough serenity and maturity to recognize that you've grown to a certain point, and it's time to let some things die off. It's time to let go of certain emotions. It's kind of like the value of a funeral. The passing, especially of loved ones, is very sad, and funerals, they're not very, or at least in a lot of cultures that I'm familiar with, they're not really fun events to attend, but they serve a really useful and necessary function. It can be really difficult for people to move on if they don't first engage in a real meaningful period of mourning, of acknowledging the things that were there, and then being like, yeah, acknowledging you're going to be moving on, you're going to be letting them go. Letting go is a good thing. Letting it go in a sort of ignorant way where people that try and let go of painful old memories by drinking or getting fucked up on drugs or whatever. It's they're aiming for the same goal, but they're not doing it in a way that's really sustainable, let's say. But yeah, so I think this card sort of symbolizes the awareness, that kind of serene, accepting awareness of how far you've grown, of the necessity to put certain things behind you, certain things that you nonetheless might identify as being integral parts of yourself. But it's the confidence and ability to say to yourself, you know, I'm putting those things behind me. This is what's going to ultimately allow me to grow into being a new person. You can't sustain all these different identities simultaneously. You got to let some of them die off. Yeah, but that's my read. So this one, this is a obstacle of an individual who's either kind of living a double life. Big money person putting on this front of not being one, but that could cause issues, or this person who's essentially so accomplished financially that he's no longer interested in the kind of things that most of us can relate to. He's interested in abstract pursuits that, may be related to money or resources, but not on the scale that not on the scale that we can relate to. And then here, moving on, growth to a new stage, that sort of that final position of getting ready to, or feeling ready to move on to that next big phase. Hope you got something good out of this. If you enjoyed it, bonk the like button, subscribe to stay up to date on all the new content. As always, if you leave a comment below, I'll put your name into a proverbial hat to for the draw for a free reading that'll be happening on Sunday. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.